We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as charged in count 1. We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, not guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in count 2.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. Let me get those forms.
After deliberating for just under 2 hours, the jury had handed down a guilty verdict to the Rust film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, for involuntary manslaughter. Now, if this is the first time you're hearing about this story, you must be wondering, what is this about? Well, this has to do with the shooting that happened on the set of the movie Rust in October of 2021, October 21st to be exact. And this was during the production on the set of the film. So there was someone who was accidentally shot and killed by a bullet from a prop gun discharged by Alec Baldwin. And the gun was not properly checked prior to that happening. So obviously Alec Baldwin didn't intentionally shoot and kill someone, but unfortunately that's what happened. The woman who died as a result was Helena Hutchins. And so this has kind of been dragging on for a while, and now we have the first guilty conviction, and it's of the armorer on set. Now, Gutierrez-Reed's trial, which lasted 2 weeks at the First Judicial District Courthouse in Santa Fe, New Mexico, focused on the fact that Gutierrez-Reed was supposed to load Alec Baldwin's revolver with dummy rounds, inert cartridges that are meant to resemble real bullets on camera, but cannot be fired. However, it turned out that one of the rounds was live. So the gun went off as Alec Baldwin was working with Hutchins to set up camera angles. When the gun was fired, it ended up killing Hutchins, but also it ended up wounding the film's director. Prosecutors Jason Lewis and Kerry Morrissey said that Gutierrez-Reed's unprofessional and sloppy work ultimately contributed to Hutchins' death. And so prosecutors accused Gutierrez-Reed of bringing the live rounds on set, showing the jury a photograph of her with what they said were the live rounds early in the filming before a key shipment from the film's main ammunition supplier. The film's firearms and ammunition supplier, Seth Kenney, had denied providing any live rounds in his testimony on Monday of this week, explaining he personally cleaned and repackaged the dummy rounds. He did have live ammunition at his business, but he didn't bring that onto the set. But it was also labeled at his business as such and stored for a different production. Now, the prosecutors argued that Gutierrez-Reed had exhibited a pattern of negligence on the Rust set, calling crew members to the stand who criticized her conduct. They testified that she had left her prop cart, where she kept weapons and ammunition, in disarray, and had sometimes failed to take weapons away from actors immediately after a scene finished filming, which is what she's supposed to do. Her defense team argued otherwise, describing that she's being used as a scapegoat and that the set was high stress. Gutierrez-Reed had denied being the source of the live ammunition, and her legal team has defended her as being a young armorer whose authority was undercut by producers who sought to minimize costs, rushing the crew and overburdening Gutierrez-Reed with extra prop duties. So there's also there were some allegations involving substance abuse, which I'll get to in just a moment. But Cenk, I wanted to pause to give you an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, so none of these arguments are persuasive at all. I think I probably would have given her more time, to be honest. So
well, we haven't talked about how much time.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in a sec. So they said she's the least powerful person on set, and it's the powerful people pushing off the responsibility onto the powerless. Now that's an argument that is music to my ears normally, but you know what the difference is? It has to be true. And in this case, it isn't true because it was her job to load the gun. So how does it make any sense to talk about her power or lack of power? Well, they say it's management's fault because they overloaded her and didn't take enough precautions. But you're kind of admitting that she's the one who did it, and she did it in your best case scenario because she was working too hard. So she put a live bullet in because she was working too hard. No, sorry, that's not a good excuse at all. It's not even within a billion miles. I don't care how hard I'm working, and I work pretty damn hard. I'm not gonna accidentally put in a live bullet to a prop gun that is going to be fired on set.
Right.
Right, so we'll get to the substance abuse. That I'd be surprised if that didn't explain it, because otherwise it's mental. And then lastly, their last excuse was she had extra prop duties.
What does that mean? I mean, look, I don't know that profession, so I don't want to downplay the responsibilities and the stress, but what does that mean?
Well, that if you think that you're like have so many duties that you might not be able to figure out how to put in a fake round instead of a live round, then don't do the job. Okay, like, oh my God, I was so busy, so I accidentally put in a couple of real bullets. First of all, I don't believe it at all. No one's that busy. And where did you find the real bullets? Why did you put them in? What does that have to do with being busy? That just doesn't, you're not even supposed to bring live bullets to a set at all.
Right.
Why did you bring it and then load it into the gun? And if you're busy, why didn't you not do that? Right? It doesn't make any sense at all. And you want to blame management, or the victims want to blame management in a civil suit. Okay, we could have that conversation, and maybe they overloaded, maybe they definitely should have taken more precautions. But if you're the one who loaded the bullet in the gun for whatever reason you did, you are definitely responsible.
So let's get to the allegations of substance abuse and its potential role in how she did her job. So there were some text messages that depicted Gutierrez Reed's use of marijuana and cocaine on her off days leading up to the day of the shooting. Look, I don't know how much credibility there is to this. Like, I don't think that if you smoked marijuana over the weekend and then came into work, it's gonna impair your judgment on how you do your job.
There's no amount of marijuana I could smoke that would lead me to putting live bullets in a gun that someone's gonna shoot at someone.
Like on following days, right?
Yeah, and following days?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it if I was the highest I've ever been, let alone the next day.
So there were some text messages allegedly showing the armorer was smoking cannabis at her hotel during the production. So that could impair your ability to make good decisions, and it really depends. Like, anyway,
it seems like, look, I'm just, maybe it could be, and every drug, people have different reactions to different drugs, so she might not be like I am. Having said that, it seems like it's something harder that causes, like, including alcohol.
No, Cenk. Like, let's not completely downplay marijuana. Like, if you are smoking marijuana while doing your job, while the production is taking place, and you have a job as important as the armorer, okay, yes, it can definitely impair your judgment. By the way, it impairs my judgment. I think I'm the funniest person on the planet when I'm high on pot. Okay, and then I go back and I look at this is embarrassing, but jokes that I've written, and I'm like, wow, I'm not funny at all. Like,
no, I disagree about you as well. But I actually am super funny when I'm high. Anyway, seriously, guys, it's an important story. Look, I don't know what she was on, but I don't really care. You shouldn't have been on anything if you're handling live bullets.
Agreed.
And if you're an armorer.
Yes, agreed. So, and this is the part that I think is super questionable if true. So there was some cocaine related content in those text messages as well. So apparently texts allegedly showing that she was smoking cannabis at her hotel during the production. After the fact, texts that allegedly showed Gutierrez Reed handing off a baggie of cocaine to another crew member the night that the shooting took place. And then she wanted that baggie back a few days later. The prosecution alleged in court filings that the armorer was possibly hungover while loading the gun and tampered with evidence by handing drugs to someone else. Rebecca Smith, a food services crew member, said in court on Monday that Gutierrez Reed asked her to hold a baggie with a white substance on the evening of the shooting. Now, because Rebecca Smith, the crew member that she had given that baggie of cocaine to, had thrown that baggie out immediately, the defense argued that her testimony on the contents of that baggie were unreliable, which is a fair thing to say because you should be able to, test what's in the bag. So that's why she didn't end up getting a guilty verdict for evidence tampering, which is what you heard in the very first video that we showed you. And according to Rolling Stone in February, the judge in this case, Marlo Summer, said that some of the text messages ran the risk of being more prejudicial than probative. I don't know what that means, but yeah. So basically,
probative means that it has evidentiary value. Hey, that was probative. That helps the case, and they're saying it's not that probative. Given how prejudicial it is, so we're going to exclude it. I actually don't agree with stuff like that. It treats the jury like they're stupid and they can't figure out how to weigh different factors and they keep evidence from them. I never liked that going all the way back to law school days.
So in October 25th, 2021 exchange between prop master Sarah Zachary and prop supplier Seth Kenny, in which Zachary claimed Gutierrez was blackout drunk the weekend before the fatal shooting. So do you think that that's valuable potential evidence?
Definitely.
The weekend before?
Yeah, because if you're blackout drunk, that means you drink a lot all the time. And it doesn't mean it definitively, guys. That's why I'm saying, like, if I'm on the jury, do I think that proves the case beyond a reasonable doubt? No way, right? But is it a factor that she's passing a bag of something that looks like cocaine?
Yeah, the
Is it a
baggie.
factor that she gets blackout drunk and that she was smoking marijuana in the hotel room and then she accidentally loaded a live round, I hope it was accidentally, into a weapon, right? Yeah, of course it's relevant. It doesn't mean it's determinative, but it is relevant.
Okay, that's a fair point. I just think you've got issues if you're bringing a baggie of cocaine to work.
That's my point. She's obviously got issues.
So Gutierrez Reed has not been sentenced yet. However, she faces 18 months in prison and a $5,000 fine. Her attorneys plan to appeal the ruling, and they're claiming that she's being used as a scapegoat by the prosecution and the state. Now remember, the person who fired the weapon was Alec Baldwin. He is also set to reappear in court on July 9th for his involuntary manslaughter charges after being recharged by a grand jury back in January of this year.
So she faces 18 months in prison and a $5,000 fine. I don't think it's enough. The fine's irrelevant, it's so small given the context of someone who's dead. But 18 months in prison, that other person isn't getting 18 months, it was a life sentence for them. They're gone and they're never coming back. So whether you're high or drunk or whatever you are, that part's not that relevant because you did what you did no matter what. Or you were just so careless with people's lives that you put a real bullet in, even though you knew it was gonna get fired on set. I think you deserve a lot more than 18 months.
Yeah, it's such a tragic story, it's awful. But this case is still working its way through the courts, and we'll give you updates once we find out how this plays out for Alec Baldwin.